What are your plans for the off season and possibly playing or just doing individual workouts?
Yeah, I mean, probably take a little bit of a break here, just for maybe a week. I don't really want to lose a ton of the stuff I've worked on, and just trying to get my body back to full health.
You thought you knew everything about the most watched rookie season in the history of professional women's basketball, but what actually happened behind closed doors after the final buzzer sounded is a completely different, highly guarded story. Everyone saw the sold-out arenas, the broken viewership records, the skyrocketing jersey sales, and the millions of dollars suddenly flooding into a league that had struggled for mainstream relevance for decades. But almost no one noticed the silent power shift happening deep inside the Indiana Fever organization. A 22-year-old phenom walked into a struggling, rebuilding franchise and almost overnight became its entire economy. And now, she is no longer just taking orders or smiling for the cameras. After enduring a grueling, highly controversial, and physically punishing debut year, the undisputed golden goose of women's sports has completely flipped the script on the executives who drafted her. But she isn't just asking for minor off-season changes, she is demanding a complete structural overhaul. Armed with unprecedented leverage and the undivided attention of the entire sporting world, she has quietly laid out a list of strict, non-negotiable conditions that the front office must meet if they want to keep the most lucrative era in franchise history alive. The days of her keeping her head down, absorbing brutal hits, and taking the heat for a disorganized front office are officially over. And the new rules she just dropped on management are sending absolute shockwaves straight to the top of the league. But to understand the sheer magnitude of her new conditions, you have to look at the brutal, unvarnished reality of what forced her to establish them in the first place. From the very moment she stepped onto the professional hardwood, a massive, inescapable target was painted directly on her back. We all witnessed the blindside hits, the hostile elbows away from the ball, and the blatant cheap shots that went largely unpunished by officials who seemed completely terrified to blow the whistle on veteran players. Opposing teams weren't just playing hard defensive basketball, they were sending a deliberate physical message, trying to intimidate the rookie who was suddenly stealing all the headlines, endorsement deals, and national television slots. Early in the season, when a rival guard from the Chicago Sky deliberately body-checked her to the floor before an inbound pass, the silence from her own teammates was absolutely deafening. There was no immediate retaliation, no gritty veteran stepping up to get in the aggressor's face, and the front office allowed the public narrative to spin wildly out of control, leaving their franchise player to fend for herself in the post-game press conferences. That passive, submissive team culture is now completely dead. So the very first mandate on her off-season table is something the organization utterly failed to provide during her debut: absolute, unquestioned physical protection. She has made it incredibly clear that the team must acquire a legitimate enforcer, a no-nonsense, highly physical veteran willing to do the dirty work and protect the point guard at all costs. She is fully aware that her health is the single only thing keeping the lights on in that arena, generating millions for the local Indianapolis economy, and she flat-out refuses to endure another 82-game beating without a dedicated bodyguard on the roster to make opponents think twice before throwing another cheap shot. But that wasn't the whole story, because the physical abuse on the court was only one piece of a much larger, incredibly frustrating puzzle. While she was getting battered by opposing defenses, the situation happening on her own sidelines was arguably even more chaotic and infuriating. The frustration had been brewing since opening night in Connecticut, culminating in a complete dismantling of the coaching staff the second the off-season began. During the first half of the year, the offensive schemes drawn up by the sideline leadership were baffling, often looking completely disjointed and utterly failing to utilize the greatest long-range shooter the sport had ever seen. The former head coach, Christy Sides, stubbornly insisted on running a traditional, slow-paced, grinded-out system that entirely neutralized the high-octane transition game that made this player a global, record-breaking phenomenon in college. There were bizarre, momentum-destroying timeouts, called right when the offense was finally catching fire, and exhausting defensive strategies that left the rookie completely drained by the middle of the fourth quarter. It became painfully obvious to anyone watching that the traditional, old-school coaching methods were suffocating a once-in-a-generation talent. As the off-season officially kicked off, intense whispers circulated that the star guard had essentially lost all faith in the sideline leadership, realizing that she could never win a championship in a system that refused to adapt to her monumental skill set. Suddenly, the head coach was unceremoniously dismissed, and a brand new era was ushered in with the sudden hiring of Stephanie White, a highly respected, offensive-minded mastermind with deep Indiana roots. Make no mistake, a sudden firing and hiring of this magnitude does not happen without the silent, heavy-handed approval of the franchise cornerstone. She didn't have to scream into a microphone or throw a tantrum to get her way. Her subtle dissatisfaction and immense value were more than enough to force the organization to blow up the coaching staff and bring in someone who actually understands how to run a modern, perimeter-oriented offense. And what happened next would shock everyone, because changing the voice in the huddle was merely step one of her master plan. With a new, fast-paced coaching philosophy secured, her focus immediately shifted to the players actually sharing the court with her, specifically concerning a highly coveted, desperately needed free agent. Throughout the grueling summer, an undeniable, lethal chemistry formed between the rookie point guard and the team's veteran shooting guard, Kelsey Mitchell. After a rocky start to the season, they eventually figured out how to play off each other perfectly, becoming one of the most dangerous backcourts in the entire sport, reading each other's movements flawlessly and torching opposing defenses night after night. But Mitchell's contract completely expired at the end of the year, making her one of the most sought-after free agents on the open market, with rival super teams eagerly waiting to snatch her away. Historically, the Fever front office has played hardball with contracts, trying to save every possible dime and avoid luxury taxes. But the newly empowered franchise dictator made her stance crystal clear. Open the vault and pay the woman whatever she wants. There is absolutely no room for negotiation, lowball offers, or salary cap excuses this time around. She knows perfectly well that losing her backcourt partner would completely derail the massive momentum they built during their late-season winning streak, forcing her to start from scratch with a new, unproven running mate while facing double teams every single night. This roster demand isn't just a friendly suggestion passed along to the general manager. It's an absolute ironclad ultimatum. But the front office has been firmly instructed to secure the veteran shooting guard, clear out any roster deadweight that doesn't fit the fast break system, and aggressively pursue additional floor spacing stretch fours in free agency. She is flat out refusing to endure another developmental, painfully slow rebuilding phase, demanding a roster built strictly for immediate, ruthless championship contention. And if management thought they could push back on these aggressive financial demands, they quickly realized she possessed a nuclear bargaining chip they never saw coming. While the front office was sweating over how to balance the budget and keep their star happy, a massive, multi-million-dollar shadow suddenly loomed over the entire league's offseason. A newly formed, heavily funded 3-on-3 basketball league known as Unrivaled began aggressively recruiting top-tier talent, offering unprecedented base salaries, massive equity stakes, and a revolutionary financial model that the traditional league simply could not match. Founded by powerful veteran players, this new venture wanted the biggest star in the world to be their undisputed face, and they were reportedly willing to offer a Lionel Messi-level financial package to get her to sign on the dotted line. This alternate league strategically runs during the traditional winter off-season, serving as a massive existential threat to the long-established basketball establishment. By holding this monumental, life-changing offer in her back pocket, the young phenom suddenly possessed the ultimate leverage over everyone. She didn't immediately sign the contract, nor did she publicly decline it, brilliantly leaving the possibility dangling in the air and creating a constant state of panic within her home organization. If her specific demands regarding the roster, coaching staff, and physical protection aren't met to her exact specifications, she could easily take her transcendent talents, her millions of dedicated fans, and her immense corporate marketing power to the rival league. Doing so would allow her to entirely skip the traditional off-season promotional duties expected of her by the Fever, effectively holding the franchise's winter marketing completely hostage. It is a brilliant, cold-blooded business move, using the mere threat of her absence to ensure the front office acts exactly how she wants them to. She essentially put a loaded gun on the negotiating table, and the organization has no choice but to fold to her demands. But the leverage wasn't just being used to manipulate the roster and the coaching staff. It was also aimed directly at the people holding the microphones and writing the headlines. The relentless, exhausting media circus surrounding her debut season was completely unprecedented in the history of the sport. And the organization's initial failure to shield her from incredibly toxic narratives became a massive point of behind-the-scenes contention. Every single post-game press conference felt like a dangerous minefield of bizarre questions, thinly veiled insults, and blatant attempts by desperate reporters to manufacture viral controversies for social media clicks. Reporters frequently crossed professional boundaries, asking incredibly inappropriate questions, making weird gestures, and constantly trying to spark artificial, racially charged rivalries with other rookie players. Through all of this absolute madness, the organization's public relations team seemed totally paralyzed, leaving their 22-year-old star completely exposed to a ravenous, out-of-control media mob. She was forced to constantly diffuse highly volatile political and cultural situations on her own, biting her tongue and maintaining her composure while enduring a barrage of absolute shit from people looking to weaponize her name for their own agendas. That open-door, chaotic policy has now been slammed entirely shut. A major new condition for her continued cooperation and sanity is a total ground-up overhaul of media access and PR strategy. She has demanded strict background vetting of credentialed media members, heavy limitations on post-game locker room access, and a PR team that acts as an impenetrable, highly aggressive fortress rather than a polite, welcoming committee. She vehemently refuses to be the unpaid political spokesperson for the entire league's cultural drama. Her job is to score points, break assist records, and win basketball games. And she has made it abundantly clear that if the organization cannot aggressively protect her peace of mind off the court, she will simply enforce a media blackout and stop speaking to the press altogether. And this newfound demand for absolute respect extended far beyond the press room, reaching deep into the most sacred, heavily guarded space in all of professional sports. When she first arrived at training camp, the locker room hierarchy was heavily entrenched in outdated, archaic traditions, where rookies were expected to remain totally silent, carry the veterans' bags, and remain submissive, regardless of their actual talent level or global fame. There was a palpable, An undeniable sense of animosity from older veterans across the entire league. A lingering, bitter jealousy that this young newcomer was suddenly receiving the fame, private flights, massive shoe contracts, and endorsement deals they had desperately chased for over a decade without success. Early on, whispering campaigns, passive-aggressive podcast comments from retired legends, and subtle acts of on-court sabotage were designed to put the rookie firmly in her place. The veterans rolled their eyes at her mistakes, offered backhanded compliments in national television interviews, and occasionally seemed to intentionally freeze her out of crucial offensive possessions. But surviving that incredibly hostile, isolating environment only hardened her resolve and accelerated her maturation. Now, entering her second year, she has demanded absolute leadership autonomy. She is no longer asking for permission to speak up in the huddle, she is outright commanding it. And the days of deferring to veterans simply because they have been in the league longer are entirely over. She expects every single player in that locker room to completely buy into her fast pace, her court vision, and her incredibly high standard of daily execution. If anyone on the roster has a problem with the new hierarchy or feels their ego is bruised by taking orders from a second-year player, they are fully welcome to request a trade out of town. What within the team was a total shock to the within. The team was a total shock to the system, but it perfectly mirrored a much larger, league-wide financial rebellion that she was indirectly fueling. The massive ripples of her unparalleled influence eventually crashed into the highest executive offices in New York, directly impacting the players' union and the entire future of the sport's baseline economy. For years, professional players had silently, begrudgingly accepted abysmal base salaries, grueling commercial travel schedules, and highly restrictive contracts that prevented them from maximizing their earning potential. But watching one single player single-handedly generate hundreds of millions of dollars in ticket revenue, merchandise sales, and a groundbreaking new national television deal completely shattered the illusion of poverty the owners had hidden behind. Suddenly, the Players' Union officially opted out of the current collective bargaining agreement, demanding a massive, immediate overhaul in revenue sharing, permanent charter flights, and overall player compensation. While she didn't formally orchestrate the union's opt-out herself, so her mere existence and the massive economic boom she created was the undeniable catalyst for the entire labor movement. Furthermore, she holds the absolute ultimate trump card in any upcoming labor dispute. Her massive, multi-million-dollar individual endorsement deals with brands like Nike and Gatorade absolutely dwarf her standard playing salary. She doesn't actually need a single dime of the league's money to survive and thrive. To lock the players out during the upcoming CBA negotiations, she could comfortably sit out, play highly lucrative exhibition games overseas, or simply dominate the alternate 3-on-3 leagues without losing a single DMN cent of her true wealth. This underlying, unspoken threat forces the ownership group to completely rethink their entire business model.